Hello, my name is Yudong, and I'm recording this video for my graduate class, CEN 5011, Advanced Software Engineering. The topic for this video is Agile Planning with Microsoft Project. The content of the video is shown in the slide. I will firstly briefly introduce the Microsoft Project software, then I will give an example on how to do Agile Planning with Microsoft Project. After that, I will talk about the pros and cons of using Microsoft Project in Agile, and at the last I will briefly talk about my ideas of this tool. Well, let's get started. Microsoft Project is a software produced by Microsoft. In fact, it has a long history that can be traced back to the 80s. Microsoft Project is usually considered as a manager's tool because it can assist a project manager in developing a plan, assigning resources, and so on. It is highly customizable, so that even though the software was proposed many years ago, it can still do something with the new management methodologies like Agile. Since the tool has so many functions highly customizable, I will not cover everything about Microsoft Project in this video. What I'm going to introduce is how to use Microsoft Project to do Agile planning with the Agile Project template. To create a project using Microsoft Project, the first thing you need to do is to create a project based on a template. And the way to do it is to click the File, New, and choose a template. There are several templates here. There are popular templates, but there are also a lot of templates out there online that's created by third-party organizations or Microsoft themselves. The template I'm going to use is the Agile Project template. By template means that, as I said, it's highly customizable. So you can create any concept or any workflow that you want with this Microsoft project, and you define those things ready, and other people can create the project using your workflow and concepts. And this is the project template that's provided by Microsoft, and it has a 3.3 out of 5 stars rating. I think that's not very good, but you'll see why. And we can choose a start date to today, and after you click create, you will get an empty Agile project with Microsoft Project. This is a welcome page of the Agile project. To be more specific, it is a Scrum template. You can see it here. Since it's a Scrum template, you will find those common concepts that you would expect with Scrum, such as sprints and backlogs. What I'm going to show you is to create sprints and product backlogs and assign those backlogs to sprints and schedule them. If we click the sprints button, we can see all the sprints we have. As you can see, there are 2 sprints already there. In fact, there are several sprints and backlogs automatically created with the template. We will firstly delete them so that we can make it more clear for our own sprint and backlogs. But before deleting them, I should let you know that there are several views of the project. By clicking task and this button, you can see that there are 3 views of the project. The first is the product backlog view. In this view, it will show all the backlogs that are not assigned to any sprint yet, but in fact you cannot see the work items, or let's say backlogs that have already been assigned to a sprint. In the sprint backlog view, you can see all the sprints and all the backlogs, including those who have been assigned to a sprint or those have still been marked as a backlog and are not being assigned to any sprint yet. And in the sprint view, you can see all the sprints. For example, here we have 2 predefined sprints that comes with the template. Deleting the sprints and backlogs, in fact, is very easy. We can just select all of them, right click and choose this delete task, and you will find everything will be deleted. But before that, it will confirm you do want to delete everything. Now in the product backlog, it's empty, and it's in the sprint view, it's also empty. Now we can start creating our own sprint backlogs and schedule them. Let's start with the sprints. We can enter the sprints by clicking the button. Then we will fill in the form to create a sprint. Firstly, let's choose the item type to be a sprint. Then it will automatically fill in the rest columns. But in fact, they are, most of the cases, incorrect. To modify them, you can either modify them one by one by changing the values in the grid, or you can double-click the row and a window will be prompted. You can change all the related information in this window. Let's call it Sprint 1. For sprint, we usually have a fixed length, say 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Here we can set it to the length we want. There is also a checkbox behind this called estimate. If it is checked, there will be a question mark behind the length you set. This means that your length of sprint is estimated, thus it will be extended or shrinked when it schedules automatically. Here we set it to be 2 weeks. And we will not mark it as estimated. Below this field, there are other things you want set, such as % of complete, which should be left empty when created, and the priority. In the schedule mode, I will let the auto schedule mode on. After that, we should set a start date and end date. Since we have already set the length of the sprint, we can only set the start date of the sprint. Let's say we set it to today. Then if we click OK, then the end date will be automatically changed to 2 weeks later. But before that, there are also some other tabs which contains other information you might be interested in. For example, in the predecessor tab, you can define the predecessor that this sprint will start only after that. And in the resource tab, you can assign resources to it, for example, human resource or hardware resource, another kind of resources. You can define the resource and we will come to that later. There are also other tabs where you can do more settings. For example, the Advanced tab, the Notes tab, where you can write some notes, and some other tabs. But some of them may be redundant or not applicable. For example, the deadline field in the Advanced tab. In fact, for sprint, we already have a deadline, which should be the end date of the sprint. It is listed there, I guess, is because this tool is not specifically designed for Agile. So people have to implement the new concepts based on the existing concepts. Or maybe sometimes people just need to have another deadline apart from the end of the sprint. Well, now if we click the OK button, then we will have a sprint, and it's called Sprint 1, and the start date is today, and we'll finish date. We can see that it has been automatically changed to 2 weeks later. You can see it in here. Let's create another sprint using the same method. Let's call it sprint number 2, and it will have the same length, which is 2 weeks. Then we have to set the start date of the sprint. You may wonder, should the start date be automatically set to be the next week of the previous sprint? Yes, you can do it by setting the predecessors. But by default, the template itself does not assume any dependencies. Here in the predecessor tab, you can set the dependencies to be the first sprint, which has ID 1, and you can input the ID of the sprint and click somewhere else, and it will recognize the sprint with a specific ID. You can see here it has been recognized as sprint number 1, which is correct. And when we click the OK, we can see that this sprint is scheduled and with the right date. It has been set to start from the next business day after the first sprint. But now you can see that the sprint number is not assigned yet, although we have created it to be number 1, number 2, but this column has not been changed. In this template you have to set it manually, and which I think is a flaw of this template. Then let's create some product backlogs. We firstly go to the product backlog view. In this view we can create backlogs in the similar way that we created sprints. Well, firstly we set the item type to be work item, which in our term is a backlog. Then we double click the row to set more information. Let's say the name is going to be feature number 1, and let's say it will be a 16 hours work. We also have to set the start date, but in fact if we want to assign it to a sprint, we can set it to start as sprint starts. The way we work around with this is to set a predecessor, and we set the type to be start to start, which means that this work item or this backlog can start to be worked when the sprint 1 is started. So when you click OK, you will see the columns will be filled, but in fact you can see there are several columns that have not been changed, although I have changed the information. So we have to manually do that. I think this is one of the flaws of the template. And the other thing is the sprint number here. And now we have a backlog created. You can see in the sprint backlog, it is named as feature number 1, and it has 16 hours of remaining work, and it has not been actually worked, and it starts when the sprint 1 starts, and it will end by the second day. You can see the predecessors in here. It means the start to start. And in the Gantt chart, which is automatically generated, you can see the schedules. The arrows here means it will start when the sprint 1 starts. Then let's create another product backlog so I can show you the resource assigning functions. Let's just create the backlog using the same way. Let's name it to feature number 2. It's going to be 64 hours work, and it's going to be still in sprint number 1, but I will set the predecessor to be number 3, which is here. You can see so I will set this backlog to be started only after the number 3 work item, which is feature 1, finishes. So in the sprint backlog you can see that it will have a start date of 29th because it's going to be 1 day after the end of the previous feature, and it will have 60 hours work, but in the Gantt chart it is only 1 day's work because, as I told you, it is a flaw of this template. We should manually synchronize them, which is painful, but we have to do that. So now we can see that is correctly scheduled in the Gantt chart. It will take 8 business days, which is exactly 64 hours to finish, And then we will try to show you the resource assigning functions. The resource assigning function is to assign resources to the task. In fact, the resources management function is not designed for Agile template. It is just a built-in function in project. You can view all your resources in the resources sheet, and resources can be human resource or hardware resource or service or anything. You can also add, delete, and edit the resources. For example, I want to add a worker called cat, and it will automatically generate some field for you. And here I want to set the standard rate, which is standard weight per hour. Let's say it's $100 per hour, and the overtime rate is $200 an hour. And then assigning the resources to work items or backlogs is also easy. What we can do is double click the work item and select the resources you want to assign. And here we set the units to 100%, means he or she will spend 100% of his or her time on this work item. And here you can see that Alice will fully work on this project, fully work on this work item, and it should take 8 days, because 64 hours divided by 8 is 8 days, and here is on schedule. When the project is going on, the team member may report the progress. What you can do is to change the number of hours that people have actually worked on the task. For example, here I changed the actual work to be 10 hours. Then the remaining work will be automatically changed to 60 minus 10, which is 6 hours. And it will be shown in the Gantt chart with a solid line in the middle to show that the current progress. However, here comes the question. The plan we're doing here is a file on your own computer. How can you let the other team members view and edit the project file? Well, there are several ways to do that. First is to save this file on a SharePoint server, and then the other people can sync with this file to view the latest version, or change and sync again, and other people can see that. The other way is to use the Microsoft Project Online, which is a modern way to do that, because it requires no client-side software, but just a browser. But since the Project Online is not free, and it is not a straightforward way to get a trial, so I can't have a way to try that, but I can only tell you what I know. Another important function of Microsoft Project is the reporting functions. There is a tab called Report, and you can find some built-in reports, such as the burn down chart and the cost overview. A few minutes ago, we set the hourly wage of the worker and assigned someone on the task. Here we can see the result, and now it shows it has automatically calculated the cost of the resources by multiplying the hourly wage and the number of hours that the worker will be working on that. And there are also other reports which you can find under here. And you can also customize your own report by selecting all the things you need. But here we will not dive into that. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of the tool. Anyway, after all the playing with the tool, I think it is more like a manager's planning tool instead of a tool that can let team members collaborate with. And the pros about this tool is, for a team manager, it might be useful because here you can have an overview of the plan in terms of time, resource, and cost, etc. It also has good reporting functions that a manager might be interested in. And the con side, well, there are so many of them. Some people say that using Microsoft Project in Agile is like painting a wall with a screwdriver. Now, there are a lot of browser-based tools that people can easily access to, and this software and this mode is outdated for Agile projects. There is also an online version of the Microsoft project, but it is very difficult to try. That might be easier to use, but I have nowhere to try. Anyway, doing all this work is not a waste of time because I came to realize that using the right tool is very important in software engineering. And thanks for watching.